In the last lecture, we had a very high level overview of what is NgRx Router Store and when we would want to use it in our Angular application. Now in this lecture, I'm going to show you step by step how you can add NgRx Router Store in your Angular application and how you can create a router state in your NgRx Store and map it to a router reducer. But before that, let's first go to NgRx documentation. So if you want to learn in detail about NgRx Router Store, you can go to this state folder here. In there, you will have this option of NgRx Router Store. You can expand that. You can see the overview, what this NgRx Router Store does. Basically, it provides bindings to connect the Angular router with the NgRx Store. Okay, and you can see how you can install it, how you can set it up in your Angular application. And if you want to see an example, you can go to this link. Now here, in order to use NgRx Router Store in our Angular application, the first thing which we need to do is we need to install NgRx Router Store in our Angular application. So here, for installing NgRx Router Store, I'm going to copy this line. Let's go to our Angular application, and there I'm going to open VS Code built-in terminal. Okay, and here I'm going to paste that command. And here I don't want to install the latest version of Router Store. Instead, I want to install that version of Router Store which is compatible with Angular 16. Let's press enter. Here it is asking me whether I want to proceed with the installation of NgRx Router Store version 16. I'll type Y here to confirm it and I'll press enter, and it will proceed with the installation of NgRx Router Store version 16. Alright, you can see that the NgRx Router Store package has been successfully installed and it has updated two files. First, it has updated the package.json file. So if I go to package.json file, there you will see that NgRx Router Store has been installed and the version which is installed is 16.3.0. Then it has also updated the AppModule.ts file. So let's also check the AppModule.ts file, and there if I scroll down, there you will see that StoreRouterConnectingModule that is added in the imports array, and on that we are calling this forRoot method. And now let me close this terminal here. Let's save the changes, and now if we go to our application, let me open the developer console, and there let's go to Redux tab. Okay, here what I'll do is, here so many actions have been dispatched. What I'll do is I'll try to restart the page. Okay, so I'll simply press enter, and you will see that these are the actions which has been dispatched. So auto login action was dispatched and login success action was dispatched. And you can also see some of the events here. These are the router events. Basically, these events were emitted when we navigated to root URL. So you can see here we have the request event, the navigation event, and the navigated event. And each of these router events, when they are emitted, they dispatch a router action. So in the last lecture, we talked about some router actions. So these are some of the router actions. So in the console, we saw that request event has been emitted, and when that event is emitted, it dispatches this router request action. In the same way, we also saw the navigation event. So when that event is emitted, it dispatches this router navigation action. And in the same way, when the navigated event is emitted by the router, it dispatches this router navigated action. When the routing is cancelled, it dispatches router cancel action. And when there is some error while navigating from one route to another route, it dispatches this router error action. All right. Now here, okay, let me go to chart here. Okay, so in this state, we have auth state and we have shared state. In the auth state, we have a user state, and this user has the access token email expires at end user ID. In the same way, we have the shared state, and in the shared state, we have is loading state and error message state. Right, but we are not seeing any router state here. Also, if I go to courses, the courses related state will also get loaded. So now the courses module has been loaded, And once the courses module is loaded, this store, it gets updated, and there the courses state is also added. And in the courses state, we have the courses, the show form, edit form, selected course, etc. So here you can see the complete tree of all these states present in our single store. But here you will not see any router state. Now, in order to enable the router state, we also need to create a new state in our single store, and we need to map that state to a reducer. That we will do in a bit. But here, if I go to tree, you can also see the states in this way. So here we have our auth state. If you expand that, you will see all the state properties present in that state. In the same way, we have the shared state. There you can see we have two states, is loading an error message. And we have the courses state. There you can see we have four states: courses, show form, is edit mode, and selected course. In the same way, here we also want to have one more property called router, and that router should show all the route related states. Also, you would have noticed that when I navigated from home page to courses page, again these router events were emitted. So the navigation event was emitted and the navigated event was emitted. If I go to counter page, again you will see that these events are emitted. So navigation event and navigated event. Alright, so every time we navigate from one route to another route, the router store is going to emit some events, and when those events are emitted, behind the scenes it is going to dispatch some actions. Now, if I go to one of these events, so basically if I go here, this is also an action, right? So for this action, if I go to this action tab, you will see the type for this action is NgRx Router Store / navigation. So this action has been dispatched. And when this action is dispatched, this is the router state. So in the router state, you can see the URL is /counter. Here you can also see the parameters. So for this, we do not have any route parameter, and we also do not have any query parameters. So all the data related to that particular route based on this navigation action you can see here. Okay, so this is the route data. If I go to navigated, here also you can see the type of that action, which is navigated, and you can see the router state. You can see the current URL, which is /counter, and the other details like route parameters, the query parameters, etc. Now, what I want is I also want to have the route state data in our actual store. So if I go to state, here we can see the state data. These are the states which we have in our store. In the same way, I also want to add a router state here. For that, let's go to our application, and here I have a file called appstate.ts. In there, in this interface, first of all, I'm going to add a property. I'll call it as router. You can name this property anything, but the type here is going to be router reducer state. Okay, and here also I'm going to add a property. Again, the name should be router. Okay, and here with this name, a state will be created, and we need to map that state to a reducer. In this case, we need to map it to router reducer. Now remember that we have not created this router reducer. It is provided by NgRx Router Store. So it is built in with NgRx Router Store. We don't need to create any reducer for this router state. We can simply import it from NgRx Router Store. Okay, and with this, if I save the changes and if we go to our application, now let's click here. And now you can also see the router state here. Let me go to courses so that it will also add the courses state. But along with the previous states, now you can also see the router state added here. Okay, so currently we are in the courses page. If I expand this state, okay, actually I have to select the latest action which has been dispatched here. So this is the latest action, and there you will see that the current URL is /courses. Okay, and we have other details in this route. If I expand it, you can see the params here. We do not have any route parameters. We do not have any data with this route, and this URL is empty array, and we do not have any route config, any query parameters, etc. In there we have first child. So there also you will see other details. So for example, for this, the route config path is courses. Now what I'll do is, let me go to one of the course details. So I'll click on this button, and now we also have a route parameter in the URL. So let me go here. Okay, and let's check the current state now. So I'll select this action, and here I will check the state. So you can see the URL is this. If I expand the roots, in there if I expand the first child, there I can expand the inner first child. In there I can expand this route config. So here you can see the path, which is course / this id route parameter. Okay, and here if I expand this params, here you can see the route parameter. So you see, to get the route parameter, how much we have to navigate. So from the outer root, we went to first child, right? From the first child, we went to its first child, and there we have this params property, and there we have the id param, id route parameter. So in the next lecture, what we are going to do is, for our Angular application, we don't need all these router details. We might only be interested in the URL path, the query parameter, as well as the route parameter. So we only want those details for the currently active route instead of having all these details. For that, what we are going to do is, we are going to serialize this router data, and we are going to serialize it in such a way that we will only get the required route data which we might want to use in our Angular application. That we will see in our next lecture. This is all from this lecture. If you have any questions from this lecture, then feel free to ask it. Thank you for listening and have a great day.